After 8 years of marriage with Andrew, we treated each other with respect, almost like courteous guests. When the car accident happened, he instinctively shielded me with his body. Just before his last breath, he told me, "Emily, I love you, but I'm sorry I can't stay by your side forever." Those words haunted my dreams almost every night. At 35, consumed by longing and unable to eat or sleep, I was diagnosed with cancer. I died on the operating table. Then, when I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the eve of that accident, determined to stop him from going. I begged Andrew not to leave, but he still went. This time, he didn't get into an accident. Instead, he went to meet his true love, Clara, and planned to divorce me. The words he said before he died weren't meant for me, they were for her. When I blinked again, I woke up in Andrew's arms. The fresh kiss marks on his collarbone screamed of everything that had just happened. The pristine white room, his slightly furrowed brow, and his even breathing filled the space around me. My heart synchronized with his rhythm. "Now, where are we? What time is it?" Andrew rolled over, slipped on his robe, and walked toward the bathroom. The sound of water running brought my scattered thoughts back to the present. Glancing at my phone, I saw the date. It was the day before he was supposed to leave for his trip. According to the timeline I remembered, I would go with him, and we'd crash into a large truck. Those moments replayed vividly in my mind, suffocating me. Andrew emerged from the bathroom, droplets of water still clinging to his hair. He sat beside me and pulled me close, as if intending to carry me to the bathroom, wrapping my arms around his waist. I nestled into his embrace. The familiar scent of him enveloped me, calming my nerves. After a while, I whispered, my voice trembling slightly with tears, "Can you not go on the trip tomorrow?" He cupped my face, kissed me softly on the lips, and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong? Please don't go tomorrow." I pleaded, locking eyes with him. "I'll make your favorite steamed fish at home. Then we can take a walk together in the evening, and maybe visit Mom at the hospital. Would that be okay?" He didn't reply. Instead, he lifted me into his arms and carried me to the bathroom. I wanted an answer from him, but I drifted into sleep without hearing one. The next morning, he left home early. On the dining table, he had carefully prepared breakfast for me. Andrew had always respected my wishes. If I ever asked him not to do something, he would comply without question. After finishing breakfast and tidying up, I went to the market to buy groceries. My hands, unused to cooking for so long, fumbled, and I accidentally cut my finger. Blood flowed freely as unsettling thoughts circled in my mind, leaving me restless. At 7 p.m., I messaged Andrew, asking when he'd be back. There was no reply. At 8 p.m., I sent another message, but again, nothing. Finally, at 10 p.m., he replied, "Honey, I've arrived in Chicago." His words hit me like a heavy weight on my chest. Panicking, I called him. Through the phone, I heard laughter and the clinking of glasses. Summoning my voice, I asked, "Andrew, how did you get there? Did you fly?" He explained that he had taken a different mode of transportation this time, avoiding the circumstances of the previous timeline. Exhaling deeply, my heart settled, but fear still lingered. I couldn't shake the dread that something might still go wrong. I booked the next flight to join him. Only by staying close to him could I feel at ease. The flight was delayed due to a thunderstorm, and by the time I landed, it was already the following morning. Exhausted from a sleepless night, my thoughts were sluggish. As I exited the airport and got into a taxi, I realized I hadn't yet called Andrew. Dialing his number, I waited, but before he could speak, I heard a mechanical voice in the background. "B031. Please proceed to counter 1 for divorce registration." Before I could ask where he was, the line went dead. Moments later, I received a text. "Honey, I'm busy. I'll call you back later." Why would the CEO of an advertising company be at the Civil Affairs Bureau? I couldn't piece together the logic. My chaotic thoughts and mounting panic overwhelmed me. Calling his assistant yielded the same response. "He's busy." I wasn't even given the address. That moment, I felt all the strength leave my body. I called an old classmate who was familiar with Andrew and currently living in Chicago, asking for help locating him. They had met just yesterday, so there should still be some way to contact him today. 3 hours later, I learned Andrew's whereabouts. He wasn't at a hotel or a business meeting. He was in a residential neighborhood. The complex was chaotic, with buildings arranged haphazardly. It took me a long time to find the unit from the address I'd been given. The silent corridor was devoid of sound, save for the echo of my own footsteps. On the third floor, I heard a familiar voice. Andrews. He was speaking softly. Clara, don't be afraid. I'm here to take you to North City. I froze mid-step. So, he hadn't come to Chicago for the project. He had come for her. The name he had called out during his accident wasn't mine. It was hers. The person he couldn't let go of, even in death, was Clara. He was here to support her. Though the truth was painfully clear, I refused to accept it. My body trembled uncontrollably, but I couldn't take another step. I stood rooted to the spot, shaking, as I heard a voice inside ask him, "Will you divorce Emily?" "I will," Andrew replied gently. "Just give me a little more time." "Okay." His tone was soft, as if he were coaxing a rare and precious treasure. This was the same man who had slept in my bed just last night. A wave of nausea welled up inside me. Step by step, I approached the door. Through the mesh of the screen window, I saw them. Clara was the first to notice me. Her face paled, and she instinctively clutched Andrew's sleeve, hiding behind him. It took Andrew a moment to realize someone was outside. He didn't know how much I'd heard. His face showed no panic, just a fleeting flash of surprise before settling back into calm. He opened the door and faced me, expression unreadable. I stared at him, my heart a swirling storm of emotions, and finally asked, "Why are you really here in Chicago?" "Emily, listen to me," he began, his voice steady. "I came here for the project, and while I was here, I met up with an old friend I hadn't seen in years." He reached out to take my hand, but I stepped back, avoiding his touch. Lowering my gaze, I let out a bitter laugh. Was discussing our divorce part of catching up with an old friend? For the first time, I saw him falter. He tried to explain, but no words came. Suddenly, everything fell into place. The reason he couldn't bring up divorce before was because he hadn't yet finished transferring assets. He had needed time, and I had been the fool all along. In our previous life, Andrew had called out my name before he died, but he never knew we had a child who also perished in that crash. He died. The baby was gone, and I spent every day consumed by agony. During the day, I'd force myself to sit in crowded places, watching people come and go, just to stave off the silence. But at night, the despair would crush me, leaving me in a state where I couldn't live or die. By the second year, I had turned to alcohol. Not long after, I couldn't eat anything without throwing up. Within half a year, my body had wasted away completely. My health deteriorated rapidly, and I could only survive by relying on nutrient drips. It wasn't long before I was diagnosed with stomach cancer. I had no desire to fight for my life and eventually died on the operating table. The man who caused it all had spent his time thinking about divorcing me and using my money to support his so-called old friend. It was utterly ridiculous. Suppressing the wave of emotions, I took a step back and looked at both of them. In a soft voice, I said, "Andrew, I won't divorce you." The nausea I'd been holding back surged uncontrollably. I nearly ran downstairs, clinging to a tree outside the building as I dry heaved repeatedly. I felt as if my stomach bile was about to come up, and my chest seemed gripped by a giant hand, squeezing it so tightly that I could hardly breathe. But I couldn't show a single shred of vulnerability. At least not now. I hailed a cab outside the neighborhood and went to the nearest hotel. Once inside, I stepped into the bathroom, letting the icy water pour over me. Gradually, my thoughts began to settle. Memories of the previous life started surfacing, and I began piecing together the signs I'd missed. Andrew had rarely paid attention to his phone when he was home, but as his business trip to Chicago approached, his phone became his constant companion. If I so much as touched it, he would get visibly nervous. He even handed me a blank document, insisting it was the contract for the Chicago project and asking me to sign it. I trusted him, but I wasn't entirely naive. That's why I had followed him to Chicago. Now, thinking back on it, that blank document was probably the final page of a share transfer agreement. If I had signed it, everything I had worked for over the years would have been gone in an instant. I dried myself off, lay on the bed, and stared at the ceiling, feeling only waves of bitter cold sweeping through me. Lying there, I was overcome with fragments of memory. Andrew's image lingered in my mind when I closed my eyes. I remembered how he had spoken so sweetly when we got married. "Emily, I'll protect you for the rest of my life." How long was the rest of my life? I thought it would be decades, but it turned out to be just a few years. In my dreams, everything dragged me into an abyss, pulling me deeper. I woke up late at night, feeling a little hungry. I went out to grab some food and, by coincidence, saw Andrew with Clara. They each held a child's hand, looking every bit like a happy family of three. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach, and I took a step back. Even though I knew the child wasn't Andrew's, my heart still couldn't accept it. Andrew didn't love me, so naturally, he wouldn't have loved my child either. Perhaps my child was never meant to exist in this world. But I had spent an entire year preparing for pregnancy, and when I finally conceived, it had felt like a miracle. Tears rolled down my cheeks as sadness consumed me. I made my decision that very night. I took the next flight back to North City, went home, packed my things, and headed straight to the hospital. The child I was carrying had no future. I called my best friend, Lily, to accompany me, telling her only that I needed her support without explaining why. Sitting on the toilet in the hospital, I felt the dampness below me. It was as if my body was being torn apart. Tears blurred my vision, and in my mind's eye, I saw myself as the brash 20-year-old who had once told Andrew, "Don't be afraid. I have money. What's mine is yours. Andrew, go for it, even if you make mistakes. It's okay. You're the best husband in the world." One memory after another flashed before me, slipping through my fingers like shooting stars. I couldn't hold on to anything. They came and went as if mocking me. Lily, who had never seen me in such a state, sat by my side silently, her own tears streaming down her face. She didn't ask what had happened, only said, "Emily, don't be afraid. I'm here." In the dead of night, I regained some clarity. The darkness surrounding me was overwhelming, but my thoughts had never been sharper. Andrew and I had always wanted a child, but the heavens weren't kind to us. Despite trying for a long time, there was no progress. Yet ironically, when he decided to give up on me, I suddenly became pregnant. I wondered, how would he feel now, watching his own child leave this world? I wanted to know the answer, so I sent him all the medical reports. As I held the stack of papers in my hand, flipping through them over and over, tears streamed from my eyes. My chest felt like it was being squeezed by a giant hand, making it hard to breathe. It took a long time before I could calm myself down. In this situation, the most innocent person wasn't me. I had chosen this man, this marriage, and this child. No one had forced me, but my unborn child had no choice. Wiping away my tears, I looked at myself in the mirror, splashing cold water on my face. I forced myself to sober up. I couldn't let sorrow consume me. Everything Andrew had now was because of me, and I intended to take it all back. I repeated this resolve to myself. On the third day at the hospital, Andrew came. He strode straight to my room, standing over me and looking down with eyes bloodshot and filled with sorrow as if he had lost something important. But I knew better. He didn't truly care about the child we had lost. This display was just an act. I sat up in bed and looked at him. It was a long time before he finally spoke. "Where's the baby?" I didn't answer, and he grabbed my hand, anger written all over his face. "Emily, that was my child. How could you make such a decision without consulting me? How could you be so cruel? So selfish?" His voice boomed through the room, reverberating with echoes. I simply sat there, quietly listening. Andrew and I had been college classmates. His family background was modest, and his living allowance was barely enough. While others were out having fun, he was often working part-time jobs. He worked at least 2 shifts a day. We didn't interact much, except for occasionally teaming up for major projects. Later, he began asking me to partner with him for group assignments and even started bringing me meals to my dorm. When he found out I had a fever, he went out late at night to buy me medicine. During my internship, when I had to work overtime, he would pick me up from the office. Though his family background wasn't great, He had good personal qualities. He was attractive and well-educated. Slowly, I found myself liking him. When my father learned that I was dating him, he was furious. "Stay away from him," he said. "He's not good enough for you. If he's pursuing you, it's because he has ulterior motives. A marriage without benefits is like sand. It won't hold together. Your marriage isn't something you can decide on your own." His tone was harsh, like a brick striking my chest. I had grown up surrounded by love and privilege. Yet suddenly my father was telling me that the fortress of love he had built for me was nothing more than a house of cards, ready to collapse at any moment. Was I meant to bury myself in it? On what grounds? I stared at Andrew with unwavering eyes and asked, "Then who makes the decisions?" The air grew heavy with silence. He didn't answer. My mother tried to comfort me, saying, "He didn't mean it. Don't take it to heart." But I felt like a commodity, something to be bought and sold to the highest bidder. Andrew didn't have money, so he wasn't worthy. Maybe it was out of defiance. Or maybe I wanted to prove that Andrew had no ulterior motives. I proposed to him. I stole the household registration booklet from my mother's hands and went to register our marriage. When my father found out, he slapped me hard and told me never to return home again. After that, for many years, my family and I lost contact. To support Andrew's business ventures, I sold my car, my house, even my designer bags. Bit by bit, I used my money and connections to build a ladder for him to climb. My mother, hearing about my situation from others, started helping me secretly out of pity. Even my father, despite his harsh words and dislike for Andrew, quietly brought projects to Andrew's company. I knew the real reason behind it all. They pitted me and wanted me to have a better life. Nothing more. After years of fighting against my parents, I finally understood who around me was genuine and who was not. Listening to Andrew hurl insults at me, I felt nothing. He ranted for a full 2 minutes before finally stopping. I looked at him, a faint smile playing at the corners of my lips. "You already have a child, don't you? I saw you out shopping together just a few days ago. Wasn't that your child?" He leaned down, grabbing my collar, and the hatred in his eyes pierced me. But I couldn't show even a shred of pain. "Emily, I want a divorce," he said. I pushed his hand away and let out a quiet laugh. "I want all the cash and shares cashed out. Otherwise, I'll drag you down with me." I knew Andrew too well. He wouldn't act rashly without knowing the full extent of what I had in my hands. He was too cautious, always calculating. This trait had its advantages. He was thorough and meticulous, achieving near perfection in everything he did. But it also held him back. He couldn't take risks because he overthought everything. Smiling, I said, "Think it through before coming back to me. And when you do, I hope you bring good news." As I watched his retreating figure, my smile slowly faded. My hands clenched tightly, the pain in my palms finally bringing me back to my senses. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital and returned home. The house was eerily quiet. Without a single sound, I curled up on the couch, staring in the direction of Andrew's study. When we moved into this house, we had set up 2 studies, one for him and one for me. Andrew had said we both needed personal space. Out of respect for him, I had never entered his study. But today, I suddenly wanted to know what secrets lay hidden in his room. The layout of our studies was almost identical, but his had a safe. I didn't know the combination and couldn't open it, so I called a locksmith. Inside the safe, there was a photo album, an old phone, and a ring. The ring was a woman's ring, but it wasn't mine. The photo album was filled with pictures of Clara, spanning from middle school through high school graduation. In the safe, there were more photos, all from important moments in Andrew's life, including our wedding. I clenched the ring in my hand and turned on the old phone. The screen lit up, revealing images of a younger Andrew, his youthful face filled with vigor. Beside him in nearly every photo was Clara, often leaning close to him, her presence unmistakable. As I scrolled further, a video started playing. Clara was laughing brightly, her smile radiant as she turned to Andrew and asked, "Andrew, who do you like the most?" "Of course, it's you, Clara." The Andrew in the video replied without hesitation, his voice filled with the candidness and loyalty of youth. I had never seen Andrew like this. In my memory, He was always calm, mature, and unflappable. He never lost his composure over trivial matters. And he certainly wasn't someone who would easily utter words like, "I like you." But now I understood. It wasn't that he found it hard to say those words. It was that he didn't feel that way about me. I let out a long, heavy sigh, moving to stand by the window and looking down at the street below. So, from the very beginning, his intentions in approaching me hadn't been pure. And yet, I had walked willingly into the trap he'd set for me. When Andrew returned home, he found the house in disarray. He silently tidied everything, putting things back in their place before walking up to me and extending his hand. I looked at his outstretched hand and smiled faintly. He wanted the ring, but I had no intention of giving it back. I walked toward the bathroom, the ring still between my fingers. Andrew followed closely, his face filled with urgency. Just as he was about to snatch the ring, I moved faster, letting it slip from my hand into the running water, watching as it disappeared down the drain. That moment, he raised his hand. The slap didn't land on my face, but it felt as if it had. I let out a bitter laugh, tears streaming down my face. "You want the ring? Go fish it out of the septic tank if you can," I said softly. "Emily, you deserve to be abandoned by everyone." He spat, his voice cold and heavy. The word struck me like a blow. Everything I had sacrificed for him, all that I had done, was now being used as ammunition against me. Raising my hand, I slapped him hard across the face. "Andrew, it was you who made the mistakes, not me." He stared at me, his expression unreadable. What mistake did I make? I didn't have an affair. I just want a divorce. What's wrong with that? He walked into the study, rummaged around for something, and returned 2 minutes later with 2 documents in hand. He placed them on the coffee table in front of me. They were divorce agreements, already prepared. My hands trembled as I picked them up, carefully reading through the terms. He was giving me all the cash, 2 properties, and 30% of the company shares, to be converted into cash value. He had agreed to all of my conditions. I picked up the pen and signed my name where indicated. Then, I handed the pen and the agreement to him. He signed his name without hesitation. "I'll pick you up tomorrow to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau," he said calmly. For the first time in what felt like forever, Andrew and I sat in the same space without arguing. The next day, I sat in the passenger seat, staring out of the window in silence. Questions swirled in my mind, too many to make sense of. After a long pause, I finally asked, "When did you and Clara reconnect?" He furrowed his brow and replied, "Does it even matter anymore?" "It doesn't," I admitted. "But I want to know." I didn't wait for his response, and he, seemingly resigned, continued speaking on his own. "Believe it or not, it doesn't change anything. I never thought about divorcing you. Clara and I have nothing between us. Her husband cheated on her, but she refused to divorce him. She asked me for help. What happens between us has nothing to do with her. Before Clara appeared, while we weren't deeply in love, we were respectful and considerate of each other. But the moment she came back into your life, you lost focus. All your thoughts revolved around her." I looked at Andrew and asked, "Do you love her?" The question hung in the air, met with silence. His silence confirmed the truth. The love from one's youth often leaves the deepest impressions, impossible to forget. We signed the divorce cooling-off agreement, and he offered to take me home. Standing outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, we watched couples come and go. My heart was filled with endless sighs. Years ago, we had walked through these doors hand in hand, thinking only of how to build a good life together. No one gets married with the intention of divorcing. I shook my head at him and said, "You don't need to take me." I took a cab home, and the past flashed before my eyes. In the previous life, I kept my illness a secret. By the time my mother found out, it was already in the late stages, with little hope of recovery. She cried so much during that time that her eyes were nearly blind. Day and night, she knelt in front of the Buddha, praying only for my health and long life. Even my strict and stoic father turned gray-haired overnight. And me? I had thrown away my life for so-called love, ruining not just my future but also the remainder of my parents' lives. If I had known from the start that Andrew went to Chicago for Clara, I wouldn't have been so heartbroken that I couldn't eat. I wouldn't have gotten stomach cancer, nor would I have died young on an operating table. I would have lived a good life, maybe even found a younger husband, had a child, and lived healthily to 80. Thankfully, everything has changed, and there's still time to make things right. Everything Andrew has now came from me, and he'll have to return it all. The new year was approaching, and the streets were festively decorated. In previous years, Andrew and I would have gone on a trip together, returning to his hometown just before the holiday. But this year, the house was empty, just me. I curled up on the sofa, reading Clara's information. She and Andrew had grown up together, childhood sweethearts. In college, she attended a school in Chicago, and they lived apart. Though they weren't in a relationship, they became each other's unattainable first love. Later, Andrew and I got married. 6 months after our wedding, Clara also got married. Her life after marriage was ordinary, uneventful, until her husband cheated on her. That was when she reconnected with Andrew. The first time they contacted each other was half a year ago. Coincidentally, that was also when Andrew handed me that blank document to sign. It all made sense now. Clara's divorce had stirred something in Andrew. He began quietly transferring assets and plotting to steal my shares. I placed the laptop on the coffee table and went to pour myself a glass of water. Just then, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I was stunned to see my parents standing there. My father's expression was stern, his displeasure written all over his face. My mother quickly said, "Don't scare Emily, please." Her face was calm, her hair dark without a single trace of gray. In that instant, it felt as though everything had shifted. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I tried my best to calm myself down. The moment I opened the door, however, I couldn't hold them back. "Oh dear, what's wrong?" my mom said as she pulled me into her arms. "It's okay now, sweetheart. When were you planning to tell us about the divorce? And when are you coming home for the new year?" "Emily, you..." My dad's scolding tone hadn't even finished when my mom interrupted him. "Why are you like this? You promised to speak calmly before we got here. Why do you always have to yell?" She gave him a sharp look, and my dad fell silent immediately, grumbling under his breath as he turned away. "Go pack your things. You're coming home for the new year," my mom said firmly. "Okay." I returned to my bedroom and grabbed a few pieces of clothing. I hadn't been home in years, and now, everything felt unfamiliar. Before I got married, we had a housekeeper, and I'd never cooked a meal in my life. Whenever I suggested cooking something for my mom, she'd always say, "No need to learn how to cook. You were born to enjoy life. Otherwise, what's the point of your dad earning so much money?" But after getting married, I not only learned how to manage household chores but also how to cook. First, I burned myself several times, blisters forming on my hands. Over time, I got better at it. Back at my parents' house, I went to my old room to put my things away. Nothing had changed, not even the handbags I'd bought years ago, still sitting neatly in the closet. My mom leaned against the doorframe, a soft smile on her face. "Your dad may be stubborn, but don't you know how much he loves you? He's missed you all these years, yet you've refused to come home." Tears slid down my cheeks. Memories, like seeds, had grown slowly during our time apart. But now, after seeing them again, they burst forth uncontrollably. Seeing me cry, my mom's heart ached. She walked over, wiped my tears gently, and said softly, "It's enough that you've come home." That evening, my parents prepared a feast of all my favorite dishes. Even the housekeeper teared up when she saw me. Every year during the holidays, your parents would say how much they wished you'd come home, the housekeeper said. Your dad's regretted his words for a long time now. He always says he shouldn't have talked about cutting ties with you. But words, once spoken, are like water spilled. They can't be taken back, no matter how much you regret them. And I, having inherited my father's stubbornness, couldn't bring myself to admit fault either. Once I left, I swore I wouldn't bow my head and apologize. In my last life, I missed out on so much. I didn't spend enough time with my parents before leaving this world. After dinner, my dad called me into his study. We stood there in silence, neither of us knowing what to say. 3 minutes passed before he cleared his throat and finally spoke. "Emily, your mom and I only have one daughter, and we're getting old. We always thought the company would go to you and Andrew someday. But now, do you have any plans for yourself? I do, I said firmly. Dad, you don't need to worry about me. I'm fine. As long as you have a plan, that's all that matters. He opened a drawer and pulled out a card. It was the one I used before getting married. When I severed ties with him, I had returned the card and said I'd rather starve than use a single penny from home. My dad pushed the card toward me, opening his mouth to say something but falling silent again. I didn't take it. Instead, I said softly, Dad, I have money. You don't need to worry about me. I noticed his eyes were slightly red, filled with a deep sense of pain. You've grown up, he said. Yes, I've grown up after enduring so much hardship I never should have faced. I replied. That night, as I listened to the chirping of birds outside my window, I couldn't sleep. Everything felt like it was just beginning. I spent the new year at home with my parents, then accompanied them on a short trip to nearby cities. After finalizing the divorce with Andrew, my life returned to a quiet routine. I fell into a simple, 2-point routine, commuting between home and the office. One day, while at home, I received a call from a courier saying I had a package. I couldn't remember ordering anything, so I asked him to forward it to me. When I opened it, I found an invitation. Andrew and Clara were getting married at the end of the month. The invitation was from Clara. It was a taunt. My temples throbbed as anger welled up inside me. I couldn't suppress it no matter how hard I tried. The housekeeper brought me a glass of water, noticed my pale expression, and quietly left without asking questions. After thinking about it for a long time, I decided I would go. I even prepared a wedding gift for them. On the day of the wedding, I wore a red dress and did my makeup meticulously. The moment Andrew saw me, his face changed instantly. Many of the guests recognized me and began whispering amongst themselves. Amidst the murmurs, Clara approached me with a gentle smile. I thought you wouldn't come. How could I not? I looked at her. As Andrew's ex-wife, I had to come and wish you both a happy marriage. Didn't I? I handed a document to Andrew. Here's my wedding gift to you too. It's the termination agreement between Lynn Group and Bay Advertising. Years ago, my father had signed a 10-year exclusive contract with Andrew's company, entrusting all of our advertising to them. Now that Lynn Group was under my control, I decided to end the partnership. Every time I saw the company's name, I felt sick. The name Bay Advertising had been chosen as a play on both Andrew's and my names. But now I realized it wasn't about me at all. It was because Clara and I shared the same final character in our names. That was why he'd suggested it. Andrew tried to open the document, but I stopped him, pressing his hand down. Wait until tonight to read it. It's a big gift. If you see it now, it'll ruin the surprise. With that, he handed the document to his assistant without looking at it. Then he and Clara went backstage to prepare for the ceremony. I had no interest in watching them exchange vows promising a lifetime together, so I left the venue. After returning home, I threw myself into work and tried to forget everything. 3 days later, Andrew came to find me. When the receptionist's call reached my desk, I froze for a moment, surprised he had shown up so quickly. I refused to meet him, but he stayed in the lobby, waiting for me. During all the years we were married, Andrew only knew my family was well off. He never realized I was the heiress of Lynn Group. He had never even met my parents. Even the contract with his company had been signed by the head of our advertising department. After work, as I took the elevator downstairs, I noticed Andrew waiting in the lobby. He had been there all day, and for the next 2 days, he continued to wait for me. Lynn Group was Bay Advertising's largest client. Many other clients had only signed contracts with Andrew because of our partnership. If Lynn Group terminated its contract, those companies would likely follow suit, severing ties with Bay Advertising. In essence, I was about to ruin his company's reputation in the industry. On the 3rd day, as I headed to a meeting, Andrew barged into the room. Our eyes met from across the space, and I saw the moment he spotted me. He froze, his entire body trembling. It wasn't until someone beside him reminded him, "Vice President, this is the CEO of Lynn Group you've been asking to meet," that he came back to his senses. I walked straight up to him, extending my hand. "Long time no see, Andrew." His fists clenched tightly, and after a few seconds, he reluctantly shook my hand, his voice stiff. "Long time no see. Andrew," I said with a smile, patting him on the shoulder. "This is just the beginning. The real challenge is ahead. You'd better prepare yourself." I released the news about terminating the contract with Bay Advertising. Many companies, seeing Lynn Group's withdrawal, announced they wouldn't be renewing their contracts with Andrew's company either. Those still on the fence decided not to consider him further. Andrew found himself in a precarious position. He wanted to ask for my help but didn't know how to approach me. 6 months later, his company, once profitable, began hemorrhaging money. Unable to sustain the losses, he eventually came to me. He stood outside my house, lighting cigarette after cigarette. My father had someone chase him off, but Andrew simply moved a little further away and continued to wait. He stayed there for 3 days. I refused to see him, but instead, Clara showed up. She stood outside my office building, crying and causing a scene, accusing me of stealing her husband. A crowd gathered to watch, many recording the incident on their phones. She was visibly pregnant, which made the security guards hesitant to forcibly remove her. Worried about the situation making headlines, I finally went downstairs. As soon as I stepped outside, she knelt in front of me. "Emily Lynn, you know Andrew is married now, don't you?" she sobbed. "Can't you stay away from him for the sake of my pregnancy?" Her tearful plea made her look pitiful, and the murmurs from the onlookers grew louder. Some said I didn't look like the type of person who would do such a thing. Clara was trying to use public opinion to pressure me. She was clever, but her cleverness often veered into foolishness. I walked up to her slowly and asked softly, "Did you know Andrew was married before? Did you know when you got involved with him that we hadn't even divorced yet? And when you were wrecking my marriage, did you know I was pregnant too?" Clara didn't listen to a word I said. She just kept crying and begging me to stay away from Andrew. Annoyed, I shook her hand off and had someone call Andrew. When Andrew arrived and saw Clara, he walked straight over and pulled her to her feet. His voice boomed as he yelled, "Can you stop causing a scene?" His tone was so loud and harsh that Clara flinched, her body trembling. She seemed shocked. She had probably never seen Andrew like this before. She tried to lean on him, but he pushed her away. After a long silence, he finally said, "If I had known you'd turn out to be such a disaster, I would have never gotten involved with you in the first place." Clara stared at him in disbelief, her body shaking even more. She no longer resembled the radiant bride she had been at the wedding. Their marriage, barely half a year old, was already in shambles. The so-called perfect first love had turned into just another mundane relationship once reality set in. It was almost laughable. Andrew tried to approach me to speak, but I didn't even glance at him. I walked straight to the elevator. Their relationship had nothing to do with me, and I had no intention of getting involved. They could sort it out however they pleased. Andrew's attempts to secure funding failed, and one by one, his investors pulled out. His company was left with no options. Either I would acquire it, or he would have to declare bankruptcy. I had my people negotiate a deal to purchase the company at a low price. After some back and forth, Andrew eventually agreed. But as I held the pen in my hand, ready to sign the papers, I suddenly felt a wave of disinterest. I looked up at Andrew and said, "I've thought it over and decided this company isn't worth anything to me." I capped the pen, set it down, and stood up to leave. Andrew followed me, calling out, "Emily, wait." He tried every conciliatory word he could muster, but his tone gradually grew impatient. "Emily Lynn, are you just playing me?" I stopped in my tracks, turned back, and smiled at him. "And if I am, what can you do about it? What do you have left to play with now?" Andrew had nothing. In a few months, his only option would be bankruptcy, followed by debt liquidation. I took 2 steps closer to him and looked him in the eye. "Andrew, soon you won't even have the right to meet me. If you have something to say, you'd better say it now." He stared at me silently, regret written all over his face. But it was too late. Clara's child was gone. Word had it that one afternoon, after discovering Andrew hadn't come home, she confronted him. During their argument, he pushed her, and she fell. That was all it took. I knew she was in the hospital, so I brought a fruit basket and went to see her. Her room was empty except for her. I placed the basket on the bedside table, stood by her bed, and looked down at her. "Didn't you think about this outcome when you reached out to Andrew?" I asked. Her face was pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked pitiful, the kind of person who would evoke sympathy. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "If I had known it would come to this, why would I have come to North City at all?" She had grown up in Chicago, where all her friends and family lived. The only reason she came to North City was that she believed Andrew would treat her well, but men change too easily. When I contacted Andrew, I never expected him to be with me. "I just wanted his help with my divorce," she murmured. Then she looked at me, her voice trembling. "But he said he wanted to divorce you and marry me." How could I not believe him? I interrupted her. "I came today just to see your downfall." Her current misery was entirely self-inflicted. While I felt a fleeting sense of satisfaction, I also felt a pang of pity. I walked out of the hospital leisurely and went home to have dinner. My parents were waiting for me. After dinner, I returned to the office to handle work. Life became busy and calm once more. For a long time, there was no news about Andrew. The next time I saw him was at a banquet. He was there trying to attract investors. He was no longer the rising star of the business world. No one greeted him. Even when he tried to strike up conversations, people avoided him. As I passed by, he grabbed my wrist. His eyes met mine, filled with desperation. "Emily, can't you help me? For the sake of what we once had." Hearing his plea, I felt nothing but irony. When I had been good to him, he had taken it for granted, believing that as his wife, it was my duty. But now, I wasn't his wife anymore. Why should I help him? I pulled my hand away and took 2 steps back. "I'm sorry, Vice President. There's nothing between us to warrant such a favor." I turned and walked away, leaving him trailing after me. Not long after, I heard that Andrew had officially declared bankruptcy. The bank had begun liquidating his assets. Another year passed quickly. Time really does fly. This year, for the new year, I booked a private dining room at a restaurant so we wouldn't have to cook at home. When the food arrived, the server turned out to be Andrew. He was wearing a waiter's uniform. When he saw me, he froze for a moment before approaching my father to pour him tea. "Sir, here's your tea." The moment my father saw Andrew, his brows furrowed tightly. Hearing Andrew's voice only deepened his disdain. My father grabbed the teacup and splashed its contents on Andrew. "Get out. Send someone else," he ordered coldly. The commotion brought the restaurant manager rushing in. He grabbed Andrew and pulled him out of the room. Later, when I went to the restroom, I ran into Andrew. He said, "I regret it." But I acted as if I didn't hear him and walked straight out. What did his regret have to do with me? My life would only get better from here, and there would be no further ties between us. Andrew's perspective. I met Emily Lynn in college. First, we didn't know each other well. She only approached me when she needed another teammate for a group project. She was a radiant person, always laughing boldly. Whenever we worked together, she would say, "We're missing one person for the project. Join our team." I would always agree without hesitation. Whenever we met, she'd bring coffee for everyone in the group. She carried a different designer bag every day, each rumored to cost thousands. Every piece of clothing she wore was equally expensive. Everyone said Emily came from a wealthy family, and that anyone lucky enough to date her must have accumulated blessings in their past life. I began to get closer to her. Beyond group projects, I started bringing her breakfast and lunch. When I learned she had a high fever, I delivered medicine to her late at night. On rainy days, I would pick her up when she went out. The closer we got, the better she treated me. In our graduation year, I confessed my feelings to her, and our relationship progressed quickly. Before I was even ready, she proposed to me. We married soon after. By our 3rd year of marriage, I decided to start a small business. However, I didn't have any startup funds. Over the years, Emily had changed. She no longer bought luxury goods and often stayed away from her family. I tried to convince her to mend her relationship with her family, but she always changed the subject. When I suggested meeting her parents, she said, "Not yet. It's not the right time." I didn't know when that time would ever come. When I started my business, she sold our home and her expensive bags to support me, giving me a large sum of money. We moved into a rental apartment. The company took off quickly, securing a large order within 6 months. My social engagements increased, which started causing friction between us. We began arguing, but I always ended up giving in. By our 8th year of marriage, I received a call from my high school classmate, Clara. No one knew that I had always harbored feelings for her. We had never been in a relationship but shared a mutual fondness. Clara was my secret. When she called, I felt an overwhelming urge to see her. I wanted to fly to Chicago immediately, but Emily asked to come with me. Reluctantly, I agreed. Few days later, she asked if I could cancel the trip. No, I replied. I need to see Clara. I want to. So badly. My desire reached a breaking point. Without telling Emily, I went to Chicago and met Clara. I told her I wanted to divorce Emily and asked her to wait for me. I didn't expect Emily to catch us. In a way, it was better. It saved me the trouble of initiating a divorce. She demanded all our cash, properties, and the liquidation of her shares. I agreed to all her conditions, and we divorced. After the divorce, Emily, who had seemed so ordinary and mediocre in her career, suddenly became the CEO of Lynn Group. Her first action as CEO was to terminate our company's contract. It was then that I learned the truth. The reason my company had risen so quickly was because of her connections and resources. She was the heiress of Lynn Group, and now, she was taking back everything, piece by piece. I begged her to show mercy, to let me go for the sake of our past. But she didn't. She severed all ties with ruthless efficiency, as if our relationship had never happened. Meanwhile, Clara caused scenes outside Emily's office, crying and shouting. In that moment, my regret reached its peak. I shouldn't have betrayed Emily Lynn. I shouldn't have divorced her. And now, I had lost everything, absolutely everything.